The New York Islanders are a bit of an enigma. After going all in at the deadline last year and then bowing out in the first round of the playoffs, the Islanders return this year with a largely similar lineup, but with the hope that this year will be different and they can make a run deep in the playoffs. It may seem foolish, but there are a lot of Islanders fans out there confident in this team and its ability to make a deep run like it did just a few years ago. But I am not one of them. Islanders, here's why I hate your stupid fucking team.
I never heard of half of these guys. The ones I do know are way past their prime.
Most of these guys never had a prime.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off then.
The one thing you cannot deny about the New York Islanders is that they are a very deep team. They have a lot of experience and talent across all four lines, which they can roll at you very easily. They can attack you in waves. There's really not a glaring weakness up front, but the other edge of that sword is that they don't have any significant threats among those forwards who can really punish you or pressure their opponent's defense. And they really haven't had a guy like that, honestly, since Topher left. Islanders fans would tell you that Matt Barzal is that guy, but he's only cracked 80 points once in his entire career, and he's never scored 30 goals in a year. In truth, deadline acquisition Bo Horvat is their best offensive player. He's coming off of back-to-back 30-goal seasons, and you could argue that his substandard point production has been a consequence of being on some pretty bad Canucks teams over the years. With an offseason and training camp now under their belts, the hope is that these two, paired along with Captain Anders Lee, will form a competent first line, even though it may not be one that necessarily get other teams to change how they deploy their defensive core. Line 2, which consists of Pierre Engvall and Kyle Palmieri flanking Brock Nelson, who is one of the most underrated centers in the entire NHL, has something of a similar issue, as Brock Nelson is the only one who's eclipsed 70 points in his career, and Kyle Palmieri eclipsed 30 goals only once back in 2016. On the third line, you have the Islanders' most promising young forward, Oliver Wahlstrom. He'll be paired up with Hudson Fasching, the most New York name I have ever heard, and Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Once again, not a ton of punch from those guys, but you can pretty reliably expect them to get 30-40 points between them, maybe even a little bit more from Wahlstrom if he continues to develop. Then the fourth line with Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas, and Cal Clutterbuck, a bunch of veterans with a lot of grit, but not a lot of offensive production. In all honesty, that's not really their game and not really what the Islanders are looking for out of their fourth line, so I don't really hold that against them. But these are just a couple of guys who bring a lot of heart and energy, and that's kind of their lot in life. On the back end, the Islanders are similarly quite strong. Their top pairing of Adam Pelican and Ryan Pollock are basically the Toyota Camry of first pairing defensemen. Not at all sexy, but they're affordable, and they'll get the job done quite admirably. On the second pairing, you've got a couple of youngsters, Noah Dobson and Alex Romanov. Both 23, the Islanders are hoping that they will continue to grow together and become the top pairing of the future, or at least that one of them will turn out to be better than Calvin DeHaan. And in the third pairing, we have Scott Mayfield and Sebastian Aho. No, the other one. Yeah, him. As far as third pairing defensemen go, you could do worse. You could also do better, much better, but you could do worse. But in goal, that's where the Islanders really shine. Ilya Sorokin is a stud, one of the most underrated goaltenders in the NHL. He has never in his 3 years in the NHL posted a save percentage below .915, nor had a goals against average above 2.5. He needs to be in Vezina consideration every single year. And his backup is Semyon Varlamov, a guy who I think could start for at least 5 to 10 teams in the NHL right now. With this two-headed monster, a defensive core that is very solid, and forwards who are more grit and grind than flash, this is a team that figures to win a lot of low-scoring games.
Anybody got an idea?
Lane Lambert was an assistant to Barry Trotz when he took over the Islanders and led them on those deep playoff runs, but Lambert himself hasn't been able to replicate that success. Seen here being the villain in an 80s movie is going to close down the rec center. Lambert's entering his second year as an NHL head coach, and while his track record is impressive, it's now time for him to spread his wings, fly the nest, and prove that he is a good coach outside of Barry Trotz's shadow, with most of the same players that Barry Trotz and Lane Lambert rode to the playoffs the last few years.
Who the hell are you?
I'm the new guy.
Hey, Magic Conch, what did the Islanders do all offseason to improve their team from the one that just got completely blasted out of the playoffs by the Hurricanes in the first round last year?
Nothing.
Thank you, Magic Conch. Yeah, that's right. The Islanders saw this team get completely caved in by the Hurricanes in 6 games and just said, well, at least they didn't get swept. Better run it back. They re-signed Pierre Engvall, they re-signed Scott Mayfield, and that's it. They didn't have a first-round pick because they traded it for Bo Horvat. They're just going to run it back under the assumption that the Hurricanes and Rangers aren't still great, the Devils aren't getting better with another year, The Penguins didn't just add Erik Karlsson. The Capitals won't be injured to hell. Great strategy, Islanders. Absolutely zero chance this backfires on you.
You gay Irish fireman, you're okay. But you, I do not like.
I'm not saying that Ilya Sorokin deserved to win the Vezina last year, but he deserves to be in contention for it every single year. That dude is scary good, playing behind a defense that is worse than his contemporaries like Shesterkin, Ullmark, or Saros. Again, I don't think the Islanders' defense is bad, but I do think that Sorokin supports them a lot more than they support him. The guy is an absolute beast. In case you couldn't tell by my sarcastic musings about the lack of moves, I think the Islanders are in trouble this year. Their division is much tougher than it was last year. Their team is solid but unspectacular, going up against a lot of spectacular players in the division like other Sebastian Aho, Jack Hughes, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, Adam Fox, and Igor Shesterkin. Their roster, which is a little bit on the older end, is also a bit more susceptible to injury, which is really bad because they have not had a lot of draft capital recently, and they have not spent the draft capital they had very wisely, so they don't have an incredibly deep minor league that they can go to call people up if somebody's out for an extended period of time. Bo Horvat or Brock Nelson going out doesn't seem like a huge loss, but for this Islanders team, it could actually be catastrophic. I'll say a prayer for your health.
Pajot